welcome to our session on privilege. It's interesting. I was thinking about this because when I used to do a lot of diversity training, sometimes I would do mandatory diversity training because that's what they would pay me to do. And I knew it would be painful. People didn't want to come to it often unless they were members of so-called minority groups. And privilege is like that on steroids. Nobody wants to talk about their privilege. It's like almost like they pretend that they don't have it, or it's like invisible to them, or they don't want to hear it. I don't know, but in any event, I think it's an important thing. And in a time when we're divided, maybe more than we ever as a group of humans, I think it's essential to realize that we have privilege, those of us that have it in different areas, and learn how to use it. So that's the intent of this little session. So just to get us started, I want you to oh, by the way, if you please get something to write with if you don't have something. I'll give you a minute to get that. I just want us to talk, just have a little very informal discussion. And the question is, just think about a time that you've been privileged and also that you've been disadvantaged. So that's both things. And think about that for a minute. I'll think about it. I'll start. Well, the first thing that comes up to my mind is that I had the good fortune of working for Princeton University for 3.5 years. And to some extent, it's a privileged position. And I used it when I was like in my later career. When people would see that on my resume, they would think that, oh, he must know what he's talking about. Really, I mean, it works. As far as disadvantage goes, I could think of a lot of times, but the one that comes to mind is I was in the northeast part of Philadelphia, which at one time used to be like a very all-white area. I think it's changed a lot. And I remember going into like a drugstore, not a CVS, but like in a small like drugstore. And there was like a corridor that was a little bit blind. So in other words, the proprietor couldn't really see everybody there. So when I came in, and I'm sure that there weren't that many Black people that came to this place, he actually came to the corridor and he looked at me, as I was like shopping in this corridor. So that's a quick example of times where I felt advantaged or having privilege and disadvantaged. And I just really like to, hear from you. And, it doesn't matter what identity you use, it doesn't really matter at all.
I'll go. So what first came to mind about having privilege was that I grew up in an all-white neighborhood, totally segregated. I went to completely segregated schools, at a time when Black people, for the most part, didn't have great opportunity for education or for getting decent jobs or for anything like that. So my parents were able to supply me with, a regular middle class existence because they never faced any discrimination, So they were able to work hard and work their way up, whereas Black people who wanted to do the same didn't have anywhere near the equal opportunities, and couldn't get the houses like we were able to get with the loans that we were able to get and all of these things. I mean, it's just a whole huge amount of privilege. But of course, we didn't see it because our family worked hard, right? Yeah. So it was totally unknown, but it advantaged me. So I didn't have to take out loans to go to college. My parents had enough money, and then I got scholarships, and they supported me. And then when I needed to get a PhD, and when I was 50 years old, um, they were able to support me for a few years while I got the PhD. And then when I couldn't get a job, then they supported me for a few more years. Okay, so talk about privilege. There it is. Our disadvantage. So when I was in Japan, just one of several experiences. I remember I was trying to find a place where our group, the Society for Intercultural Education, Training, and Research, could hold its annual party. But we were a mixed group, in other words, foreigners and Japanese. So quite a few places that I called up, no, some places that I called up, as soon as they uh, knew that foreigners were coming, they said, "Oh, we just cannot rent to you." Um, and in America, of course, that never had happened to me, so it was a surprise, but I got used to it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I could think, well, okay. I guess privilege and non-privilege is within my family, is within the same family. Um, my father was he liked women. He just liked girls. I don't know, uh, he really had my back. He was really just, he, he, protected me. And I think he was a little crazy, but he was basically a good father. He really did. I think I had a good father. And on the opposite of that, my mother was pretty much a narcissist, and she was all about herself. So, so I didn't have a good role model in terms of growing up as a woman, in terms of modeling a woman, what a woman is supposed to be. But on the other hand, I had a father who would go the extra mile for me. So that's, and I think both things are just fundamental.
Mm.
I'll go real quick by myself right now. As far as privilege, I just had like a thought based off something that happened today. It's like a little different than I guess whatever else shared. It's just you guys want to show you my hand right now. It's I got stung by a bee, and just like the little things of realizing that like how privileged I am to have my hands and my feet and all the little extremities. Because when you don't like, I'm typing with my left hand and these little things, and you just realize it's like, I don't realize how privileged we are that we have our hand that it can work. And just little things like that came to my mind. And then non privilege is yeah, I think what came in actually this is an article that Angelo says that like it's a privilege to have two parents that are there and care about you. And my father was not there in that role. My mother was very, very much. That's her. But yeah, just like I remember reading that article, never thinking about like, oh, like having two parents is a privilege. But it is, and I think I did not have that privilege. And yeah, that's my share.
I can go next. Thank you for all for sharing so far. Angelo, you may have to cut me off because I don't usually go on long monologues and soliloquies, but it's like I gotta cut this down. I will say off the top that given the current war that Israel is waging in Gaza, I mean, what comes to my mind. I'm just speaking for myself. It's a tremendous privilege not to be a Gazan right now, really. And obviously there's other wars in the world, but I mean, I'm sitting in my house in White Plains, New York. I own the house, I don't have any peace and security problems. I have health care. Yesterday I had oral surgery, speaking of what Ian went through. And it was expensive, but I was able to afford to get my broken tooth, taken care of. And my mouth is swollen. So I have to rinse it every 15 minutes with salt water in case. I'm saying that so you know that I might be skipping out every 15 minutes because I have pain. So shit happens, but I mean, I've got all the privileges here. And going into my background briefly, so as not to dwell on it, I had all the basic economic advantages growing up in the upscale community of Larchmont, New York, here in Westchester County. My grandparents were all country club members, from the owning class, the rich class. My grandparents on both sides lived on Park Avenue, 2 blocks from each other, in these apartments that today would be worth $15 million. They weren't back then, but still. But there was areas where I may have been underprivileged in quotes, and I'll cite one, which is mental health. And Ian mentioned not having a father at home, and I don't know the details about that, Ian. I'm sorry. I mean, I had parents, but I did not have functional parents. They eventually divorced each other when I was 11 years old, and so that was bad for a bad experience for me. But the whole family life, emotionally, I was like quote unquote underprivileged, and like had a low grade depression that ultimately became major depression when I was in adulthood. And Bill mentioned his parents supporting him. So when I was 30 years old and I had clinical major depression and could not work, I got SSD, and my parents supported me, to keep me financially alive. So I was kind of underprivileged emotionally in this emotionally unhealthy, I'm being nice, unhealthy environment. So, that was not a privilege. And I could go on, and that's why I'm not going to go on, because I would like to show some respect for everybody else having a chance to talk. Okay. And I'm going to go rinse my mouth now, because every 15 minutes I've got to deal with a sore mouth. You got it.
You can see it's a little swollen.
You can make them feel self-conscious.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not like Ian's hand.
Yeah, two swollen people here.
You guys are bad.
Katiba, you're the last.
I'm next. The last for the best for last. Thank you so much. Anyway. Hi guys. The first thing that comes to mind is going to Rowan University, and I was the second brown person in my whole department, and the school was mainly white. So it used to be Glassboro State. The fact that I got great grades, like I was top of my class as a student, never missed a class, really aimed for an A. And even prior to that, academically, when I was in high school, I was offered to be in honors classes, and I declined at the time because I didn't have confidence in myself, and my self-esteem as a child was so low. So I didn't do that. But really the impact that I made at Rowan University, and when I started my community Chai Together, Rowan University's department featured Chai Together in their school newsletter. So I was in it, and I thought that I would never graduate from school. Before even going to the university, I failed math 3 times. I was in pre-algebra. So when I migrated to America, I was put in Sylvan Center to learn English. And I was in ESL classes as a child. However, they never focused on the math aspect that I got left, behind in that sense. And so when I graduated from Rowan, to me, and when they featured Chai Together, I literally shed a tear, because my mom being sick, I had to withdraw from school, and I never finished college, and took care of my mom and her hospital visits. And I was in such a bad mental state that I thought I would never pass even community college, because I failed math 3 times, and my professor was very mean to me, as if I'm not good enough. And I really had to push myself out of that. And then I became a substitute teacher, and I learned a lot of math skills, and I actually became good at it. So all of this, my mainstay is that all my achievements having to do with academia, I feel proud of, because I didn't even speak English when I came here, and I used to get bullied. And I've done a lot of coursework and a lot of certifications, and I have 2 associates and a bachelor's, and I applied for a master's just this week. So let's see if I get approved. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sums up the advantage and disadvantage in your whole
Yeah.
story. Yeah. So, you know,
Thanks.
I guess the thing that, and we'll talk about this a little later, the thing which stands out to me is that you know, the how complex it is. So on some level, you got privilege because, you know, you're white or you're male or something like that. But on another level, there's a whole other thing. And you know, that's like intersectionality, some people call it. So one of the things I would like us to do is to start with, the whole point is what can we do with the privilege that we have? But before that, we have to talk about the privilege that we have or the privilege that we don't have. And in the chat, and also to everyone's email, I sent a little 32-page worksheet, I just tested it out. It takes like really 3 or 4 minutes to fill out. But does everyone know what I'm talking about? First of all, have it.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the easy way to do it, as opposed to the way that it says here with the subtract. So just start with the 0, right? And then when you do the first one, let's say you get a minus, that will be -1. And then if you get a +1 for the next one, then it's 0. Just like you do a running tally that way instead of having to add them all up. So we don't have to stop if everybody's already done it. But has everybody done it already?
I did it.
Well, can it, and while you guys are doing it, I'm going to read you some quotes about privilege that I like. I picked some out today or yesterday. My favorite one is the first one. In a world where people wear masks, it's a privilege to see a soul. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Alice Walker. Norm Chomsky says, the police can go to downtown Harlem and pick up a kid with a joint in the streets, but they can't go into the elegant apartments and get a stockbroker who's sniffing cocaine. I think this is the young woman that won the Pulitzer Prize, Malia Yousafzai. Not all of us are born with the same amount of privilege. Some of us have to work harder to get the same opportunities. Ariana Huffington says, in theory, we're all equal before the law. In practice, there are overwhelming privileges that come with winning the birth lottery. I found a really cool one. I don't know if I can find it, though. Oh, well. It's lost. It's lost. Here it is. This one's very different. We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. This is by Richard Dawkins, the scientist. Most people are never going to die because they were never even going to be born. The potential people who have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the sand grains of Arabia. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats, scientists greater than Newton. We know this because the set of people, possible people allowed by our DNA so massively exceeds the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying ads, it is you and I in our ordinariness that are here. We privileged few who won the lottery of birth against all odds. How dare we whine at our inevitable return to that prior state from which the vast majority have never stirred. So what else? Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. I don't know who Brittany Cunningham is, but she said, privilege is not about feeling guilty. It's about using your position to make a change. Pratibha Ken, give me a high sign. Let me know when you're done. I got a lot of quotes. Imani Perry says, privilege is like an invisible shield that protects you from certain harms, but it also blinds you to the experiences of people that don't have it. Privilege, Lorraine Cox, I think she's an actress, it's like a muscle that you can strengthen. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes.
Yeah, I did all the questions.
How you doing, Prativa?
I just finished as well.
I'm on 18.
All right, we got,
Take
you
your
got
time.
some way to go.
I'm sorry, guys. You have to
got
listen to quotes the whole time until I'm done.
Okay, listen to the recording. Or I'll send you a list. Stacey Abrams, who's one of my heroes, she goes, privilege is like a tool that you can use to create change. The more you use it, the more impact you can have. Brian Stevenson, I don't know who he is. Privilege is not
Just
something.
Mercy.
Hmm?
He did the movie and the film Just Mercy. He's a death row attorney in the South, and worked on the project for the lynching commemoration project.
I'm friends with his nephew, Brian Stevenson Jr.
Oh,
Yeah. Privilege is not something that's used to divide us. It's something we're used that something to be used to unite us. That's interesting. A famous AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, privilege is not something to be used to maintain the status quo. It's something to be used to create change, which is kind of the subject of our little session here. And Brene Brown, another hero of mine, heroine, privilege is not something to be used to make us feel superior. It's the same thing. It's something to be used to make us feel responsible.
I'm done, guys.
Once more by Megan Rapinoe, the soccer player, privilege is not something to be used to protect us. It's something to be used to protect others. Okay, so who got a score like that's I don't know, over 80? Anybody?
80, it's +1. You can't have 80,
No, you add them all up.
but it's only 35
That's
points.
right. That's right. Only 32. Sorry. Right.
Yay.
Who got a score that's like, I don't know, 25 or more?
I don't even think that's possible because a lot of them are subtractions.
Okay. Who got a high score?
I did.
What's the high score?
A high, what was a high
17.
score, Ken? 17. What would a high score be?
I got 22.
Oh, mine was 7. I only
Did I
got a
do it
7.
wrong?
I got a 7.
Wow.
Yeah, I got 8.
So
Yeah,
I just gave myself 1 point for the things that pertain to me. That's how I did it.
Oh, so yeah, you have to subtract if it, there are some that were subtractions.
Oh,
and
okay.
additions.
Yeah,
What I did was I started with 0 for everything. So
Right.
started with 0 and then +1 if it's good, or -1.
Oh,
Right. So what did you end?
Yeah.
Latifa, what did you end up with?
yeah. So mine's 13
7.
now.
So, not to get hung up on the math, but basically the lower score that you have
Yeah.
means the less privilege you were born into. You know,
Yeah.
so this quiz, it's a little bit, I should have told you that this is like when you grew up.
Yeah.
It's a lot different, obviously, when you're, as old as I am, right? But so what are your reflections as to, if you have a relatively high score, which we haven't really figured out what that out, I think that's 17 or something.
Wow.
I think, Ken, is that right? Just anyway, what reflections do you have about your score?
Okay, I can say something. Yeah, I like what people brought up about, being economically privileged, but emotionally sometimes underprivileged. So, so my score reflects being in the privileged group in every case, right? I'm a white male American, middle class. I mean, heterosexual, okay, right? But once you get into the emotional stuff, then it's very negative. So those were my reflections. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at these questions and it's a little bit ambiguous. Number 9 is this: if you were embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up, subtract 1 point. And you know, I never really wanted for clothes. You know, I mean, I was middle class. My parents, but when we went to clothes, my parents would always buy me stuff in the sale thing, and I didn't like that. And the way I presented myself was pretty much the same. You know, I didn't have, you know, I didn't look, you know, I didn't have the finest whatever. So I don't know what I would give myself, a -1 or a -0 or something like that. But you know, obviously I had clothes, which some people don't even have. You know, and I like this one. If you're born in the United States, add 1 point. I think sometimes we don't. It's invisible to us. You know, we live here, but you know, it's like Ken was talking about. Those people like in the West Bank, you know, or not the West Bank, but in the Gaza Strip. You know, some of them, they don't have homes, and they don't have water. You know, and that's probably, you know, that's on the extreme, but it's probably like 60% of the world, I would imagine, struggle with food issues or clothing issues or whatever. Particular raises her hand.
I did, because I grew up in India and my house used to have floods. So I would wake up and my whole house was flooded. I would put my feet on the ground and the flood was to my knees. I was like 5 at the time. And I would have to use the bathroom in a flood. Like I was peeing in the water. So
Wow.
I come from things like that, you know, and even after migrating to this country, my dad would walk in the snow to work like miles and miles to be working at like Dunkin' Donuts, you know, as an immigrant. So yeah, I grew up in floods and like manual things. So I think that's why I give a lot of gratitude to food and just the environment I'm in, that I'm not waking up to my house being flooded, things floating around. Like this stuff is very real. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that, because I don't really know anybody else that I know whose house used to get flooded.
Well, you know, I don't, other than you know, but you know, I remember there's a friend of mine who lives in where does he live? He lives in Liberia, and for reasons which take too long to explain, he's over here, and he came to my house, and we're driving through like a you know, the thing where you use the Easy Pass, and I asked him, you know, what are your reflections? You've been here for a couple of weeks. What do you think? He says, the development. His eyes are like wide, you know. And you know, I never thought, you know, to me it's just Easy Pass, right? You know, and we're so fortunate. We live in this kind of geographically isolated country. You know, we don't really, you know, there's no reason for us to have to know unless we want to, I guess. I don't know. So I've got this little movie, which it's really for like college kids, but I think it kind of underscores a lot of the points that I wanted us to think about. Share screen and share sound. Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, go ahead.
Angelo, can I
Yep.
just make a comment before the
Sure.
movie,
Absolutely.
based on what Bill and Ken said? Just in terms of, you were saying that, well, Ken said he had the privilege, the financial privilege, but some emotional issues, and Bill had went on top of that. I forget what you said, Bill, about, but my point is, if you don't have the emotional is very important, and it can really strap. You can have all the privileges financial, but there comes a point in time, like when Bill had major depression, the emotional can really strap you financially, and it could really, to me, that's the most important. If you reach a point where emotionally your background has really stopped you from growing, you have depression, you have anxiety, you can't function, financial doesn't mean anything. Financial doesn't mean anything, because you're going to go down the tubes. If you can't function, you're going to go down the tubes. You know, anyway, and the emotional support that you have, growing up. I mean, that's fundamental. And that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, for that matter, skin color doesn't matter when we're talking about emotions, I mean, you can be white and you can be black and you can, still have like emotional issues. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, in reference, thanks, Latifa, to the depression. Long story, short, succinct. I often say that the same people who destroyed me saved me, because they did save me because of privilege. My parents had to invest, and my grandparents, who were still alive, my grandmother, had to invest a lot of money in my therapy. I moved in with my mother and stepfather in their house in Scarsdale with a swimming pool in the backyard for many months, twice. And then I got out. But anyway, the point is, the privilege, it's probably a nitpick point, but if I didn't have money, which I didn't, earn myself, if my parents and grandparents didn't come up with the money, I wouldn't even be here today. I never would have made it out. I did have the privileges to get out, just as I had the, lack of privilege emotionally to get down the tubes. Just a point, not to disagree with your point, Latifa.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. I see your point, definitely.
Right,
I'd like to say the same thing.
Okay.
Let me just say the same thing. The same exact thing happened to me.
Somebody wants to see my movie. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but I just wanted to say, it's just so interesting. And what I felt was like, oh, this is a strange kind of karma, My parents, the way they brought me up, it almost destroyed me. But then as I got a lot older and I needed help and everything, they came through, So I gained so much from them. At the same time, I lost so much originally because of them. It's just very strange. It seemed like some kind of weird karma that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's complex, and this is a little bit off the subject, and then I'll just go to the movie before anybody else talks after me. The thing I think about, I knew this guy. He was my boss at Princeton, and the guy had a silver spoon in his mouth. I mean, he just came up from privilege. He was soft spoken, had a PhD, and and a part of me resented him, but he was a very human person. And I think the reason he was human, and this, I'm overstating it, but he had a brother that was had Down syndrome or mentally challenged or something like that, and so he had to deal with people that were emotionally underprivileged. Let's put it that way, in an everyday thing. So anyway, it's a complex subject. So anyway, we're gonna watch this video whether you like it or not. Okay. This is not the one I wanted to show you, but this will do. And this is somebody doing a privilege walk. These are sound. There's no sound yet, but why is there no sound? Can you hear it? Everyone hear it?
Yeah.
If you had consistent access to healthy food growing up, take a step forward. If you took out loans for your education, take a step back.
I liked where we started the exercises holding hands, and as we were going further forward and back, we were stretching to stay connected. And there came to a point where we could no longer be together. And so when we ended up, I wanted to grab the hand of the person again to see how I can maybe help bring her along or feel like I'm there supporting her throughout the experience. And so that's what I think a community is all about. How can we realize where we land, but bring others with us as we go through life?
If you attended private school, take a step forward. If you have ever been told you are well spoken, take a step back.
There are people who have had a lot of privileges in their lives, and there are those of us who have some but not a lot, but we still thrive.
If you feel your race and gender have adequate representation in media, take a step forward. If your parents work nights and or on the weekends to support your family, take a step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take a step forward. If someone has made an uncomfortable joke relating to race or gender and you stayed silent, take a step back.
I'm probably the only Asian here and also the only Chinese in my team and this company. But I do feel like I'm very welcomed by everyone, and people around me are very nice. And the time I'm being here, that I don't feel like alone, even though I am literally alone.
If your parents told you that you can do anything you wanted, take a step forward. If you have ever thought twice about calling the police when in trouble, take a step back. If you study the culture of your ancestors in elementary school, take a step forward.
I think what I learned about myself is that I need to acknowledge the diversity more, because I definitely know it exists, but I don't realize how separating it can be at times. And I think I've never been in a situation where it's been that isolating. And so looking back, I started next to Doris, and looking back where I ended in the front and she was all the way in the back, that was a little bit of a takeaway for me.
If you have ever been the only person of your race in a room, take a step back. If your grandparents were all born in the United States, take a step forward. If you have done something well and been congratulated because you're a credit to your race, take a step back. If you went to school speaking a language other than English, take a step back.
I was very surprised with where I ended up. To me, I thought I was somewhat successful, and having overcome a lot of adversity, I was, in my mind, I'm thinking I've accomplished a lot, and then we did this, and I realized that I was still kind of, I was in the back. So I was a little shocked that I was where I was at, yes.
If you have ever tried to change your appearance or behavior to avoid being judged or ridiculed, take a step back. If your family ever had to move because they cannot afford the rent, take a step back. If you were taken to art galleries or plays by your parents, take a step forward. If you were raised in a single-parent household, take a step back. If there were people who worked for your family as servants, gardeners, nannies, take a step forward. If you were ever called names because of your race, class, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation, take a step back.
I think what actually shocked me was the diversity amongst the women of color. I saw, for example, 2 African American women who were about the same age, but and they ended up in the same place, which was about the middle row. But for the most part, everything else was sort of what I would have expected for the most part.
If there were more than 50 books in your house when you grew up, take a step forward. If you have ever been followed around in a retail store by a store employee, take a step back. If you have health insurance, take a step forward.
We are visually a very diverse community. We've grown so much over the years, and then when you take a look at from what this city of Atlanta has come from segregation and probably before, it's just the growth has been astronomical. But at the same time, we have some current statistics around we are the most inequitable city. As we take a look at all the growth that's happening around us, it certainly makes you wonder how and why is this happening and who's being included and who's not being included. So it leaves me with the common phrase that I hear, we've come so far, but we're back where we're started from in some sense.
If you've ever talked with your children about how to stay safe when stopped by the police, take a step back. If you have ever inherited money or property, take a step forward. If, while growing up, you had to work to contribute to your family's finances, take one step back. If your family took vacations out of your hometown growing up, take a step forward. If your ancestors were forced to come to the United States, take one step back. If your family owned the house where you grew up, take one step forward. If you were paid less or treated less fairly because of race or ethnicity, gender or sexual orientation, take one step back. So this is your final positions.
I'm a small sample of the only white guy in the group, so I figured I would be at the front alone, but I wasn't completely alone.
I guess I was a little shocked where I ended up at the end of the privilege wall because I was in the very back, the last person. But I knew I would be near the back. I just didn't know I would be the last person in the back.
Stop. Okay. Any reflections? And you know, and I guess with the reflections, to what extent is this any of that stuff that was happening live for you right now?
Not sure what you mean by live for you.
In other
right?
words, like these are sort of some sense it's like history, like like person talked about whether oh, I don't know. There are people in your family that you had to work to help your family. So that may be true, but it could have happened like way in the past. It's not necessarily live for you, something that doesn't kind of impact you now consciously. That's what I mean by that.
May I go?
Okay, you go,
Okay.
please.
Just real quick, Bill. I was gonna say there was a heaviness to that, and I feel with the emotions on their facial expression that it could be traumatizing and it can bring up memories. And I feel like people may have been to therapy after, and grief came up. Like these are the things that came up because that's a very deep and like profound exercise to do, because I did a similar one at a business event, not about privilege, but where we had to make a circle in Utah and go around, and you have to make eye contact with one another and look into the person's eyes. It's just instrumental music playing, and it was emotional, like where people are just crying looking at each other. So point being that when you're in a room, it's like the fear of being judged and then looking around and feeling some type of way. So I feel like that was a really heavy activity.
Yeah, I've done similar things like that dozens of times, and you know, people do seem to get a lot. What's the word? People, of course, it depends on the person, but some people, it's like very, this wow, I didn't realize it's like this, But I've never experienced it as like a big psychological trauma thing. Half the time when people come to those things like that, they kind of know that they're going to be exploring things like that. So maybe that helps. I don't know. Bill, what were you going to say?
I'll just, you mentioned what's live for you now. Yeah, definitely, that I own my own house and that I have enough money to live on, and I don't have to, I could retire and I didn't have to, hustle for, to try to come up with money somehow. Um, and that I got a good education. Um, so now I can write and do the things that I like to do. Yeah, I mean, the economic privilege is so alive. I mean, it's not even a question. Yeah.
Not to be too intellectual about it, but I guess I am. So, in a way, you're a kind of a microcosm of all of us Americans to a certain extent. I mean, there's a lot of us obviously that don't have anything. But there's a fair amount of people that are relatively prosperous, when you think about it in terms of your relationship with the rest of the world, do you think about that, or is it not something that comes into your mind?
Well, it comes into my mind because I spent so much time in the rest of the world. So yeah, but right now, what Ken mentioned about the people in Gaza, I mean, that's what comes to my mind right now.
Why this is okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just kind of lost you. Okay, well, I just in response to what Bill said, I feel the same way. I'm pretty financially set. I'm retired. There's not a lot of pressure in my life now unless I want it. But then the other thing is I worked my little tushy off to get it. I mean, everything I got, it wasn't given to me. Now, I guess in that sense, there's people who work like hell and still don't have anything. But I don't know. I still feel like uh, I worked. I really worked for what I have. So I don't know if that, when I think about what I have, I also think about I worked like hell. So that's just me.
No, that's fair. It's interesting though, I think, when the first time I started working at Princeton, I really didn't realize what class was. I mean, I just thought everything was great, whatever. I like you, you like me. And that's still true. I still like you and you like me or whatever. But there's some people they start from a place that was like way, way, way elevated more than me, they have houses that you have to like, once you get to the door, you have to like have to have a map to even get to the main house. I never even dreamed there was anything like that, So, and I remember being, in some of these diversity rooms. I'm talking too much here, and thinking, wow, wondering how it might have been if I had a different starting, I don't think about that often, but I have thought about it. What are you saying? I saw a house in New Jersey. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I still feel that way about Mississippi, having lived in the South. Gosh, time is flying. I have a presentation I want to give. It's not that long. So let me give it, please. So it's just some definitions as to really what privilege is. And I'm thinking you can see my screen. Did somebody say something to tell me they can see the screen?
Yeah, I
Yes.
can.
Okay, good. Yeah. So since you can see the screen, I don't necessarily need to read it. So privilege by itself is not really a big deal unless we put it together with power. Because the truth of the matter is that our relationship to power has a lot to do with how we view privilege, whether it's visible to us or not. And the important thing that a lot of people have in the discussions we've talked about is this whole notion of intersectionality. So we all have multiple identities, and they intersect to create who we are. And the obvious ones include things like race and gender and social class and ethnicity, et cetera. And the less visible ones are things like mental disability, mental illness, as well as other forms of identity. And this is not, you can't really see this. I'm sorry that it's not that great, but I guess what I want you to do when you look at this so-called wheel of privilege power, just think about where you are with this. In other words, like, where are you privileged and not? So if I put myself around housing, I'm towards the power thing. I own property, right? Body size, I'm slim. Vulnerable, I guess I would be like mostly stable. So just take a look at that and just kind of do a, kind of a self analysis as to where you are. And just some important points about privilege. And I think the first one is kind of interesting, unless you've thought about it, it's not something that's visible to you. It took me quite a while, really, to realize, to some extent, it's embarrassing to say, that my life as a male is different than women. I have privilege simply because I'm male, but it's just something I didn't have to think about, right? And you all know that privilege groups sort of define what's normal and what's not in terms of like standards of beauty, for example. And the thing is that those of us that have privilege, we have the ability to choose whether to object to the power system or not. We can just like let things go as they are, or we can do something about it. And I like this first one. So the fact that I'm a person of color, for example, I'm more likely to take action around my own identity. I may be less likely to deal with things like I don't know, like gender issues or cisgender homophobia, for example. And the other one is sort of obvious. Everybody has a complex intersectionality of identities. So yeah, so we're going to get into this a little bit, but I wanted to talk about a little bit about some people that are sort of exemplars, or people who are doing things with their privilege. And this is sort of a mix of people who are, famous and mostly people who are not famous. Everybody knows about Bill Gates, and before they're not married anymore, but nonetheless, they started this foundation that it's arguably it's impacted the whole world. And they didn't have to do that. They have their foundation. It's about global health and education. They've made significant contributions in the fight against diseases, especially malaria. And so they've done something with their privilege. I don't know if you know about this woman, the Maasai woman. I don't know if I can pronounce her name, Kaitenya. Anyway, she started something called the Kenyatta Center for Kenya Center for Excellence. And it's a school that provides education and leadership training to girls in her community. This guy, Jose Vargas, he's an undocumented immigrant from the Philippines. And he's used his platform as a journalist to come out as undocumented and advocate for immigration reform, which is almost like something which people don't really talk about. There's a lot of undocumented people in the United States, and now they're all over the world, borderless people. This, some of you may know about Derry McKenson. He's a Black Lives Matter activist, and he's used his platform to organize protests and demonstrations especially against police brutality. Got several books out. And Dolores Huerta, she's still living. She's a labor leader and civil rights activist, and she's organized farm workers and protected for their rights. And Fred Koremitsu, he's a Japanese American man who was forced into internment camps during World War II, and he used his platform to fight for the rights of Japanese Americans. And there are a lot of people that fit into this category. And what I'm going to encourage us to do in the last 25 minutes or so that we have in a moment is to reflect on your own particular aspect of privilege and think about what you might do a little bit more according to these particular strategies, let's say. For me, the most important one is the first one, which is listen with humility. So I can, if I want to, not listen to, neighbors that I have that are, I don't have that many of them, obviously, but I have people that are, people that are into Donald Trump, right? Think he's great, right? I could just completely shut down, or I could listen. I mean, what does it cost me? At least I get to understand where they're coming from. One of our potential board members, Jim Hazener, he works with a group called Better Angels that brings Democrats and Republicans together. And anyway, I think that's a good thing. And the second one, we all have some sort of bias. It's sort of built into us just simply because it's human nature to identify with people who are sort of like us, and that gives us a bias against other people. So what we can do, as some of you on this call are doing, is to question it when you see it coming up. And the other thing is that in this world we live in right now, especially in the United States, people just live in silos. It takes really an effort to engage with people that are outside of our circle. This doesn't mean you have to go out to dinner with people, but if you see them in the supermarket or something like that, how are you? What's going on? Another thing is to be an ally. So maybe your mental health is pretty good. You can be an ally to people that are not in your, that are not that way. Another thing that we can all do a little bit more is to call out inappropriate behavior. I think of a time that I was guilty of just sort of letting it go. This is a long time ago. I guess that's the excuse I'm going to use. There was a fellow when I used to play basketball, and so there's a guy that lived. His aunt lived next door to me, and he was a great basketball player, and he worked at this kind of warehouse place that it's called the Luggage Outlet. It doesn't exist anymore. And one day I just said, "Man, the place you worked at is kind of weird, And I really didn't. I was just making conversation. He says, "Yeah, it's run by Jews." I just sort of let it go, But I didn't have to let it go. If I'd have not let it go, he's not going to punch me out or anything like that. But it might have been a useful thing to do.
Yeah.
So the question gets to be, we all have. Let me just look at this again. Oh, where's it here? Can I go back? Go back.
Just keep going forward. Oh, this year that was closed. So anyway, I want you to just look at one of these identities for you, the ones that are particularly up for you. And I will, where is it? Here we go. This particular slide that is not so well defined.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, so I make this bigger. I think I can make it bigger. No, I can't. How do I make it?
Well, it's just the pixels.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to make it cover the whole screen so you can see it a little bit better.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how to do that.
Ma-
View.
Maybe if you right click and see if you can make it as the background.
Size and position. Well, it's not going to help that much. It helps a little bit. So anyway, I mean, I can just walk through them, but what I'm encouraging you to do is to think about aspects of privilege that you have, which are most up for you in this list here. And I'll just read them. There's gender. So you can do maleness, so you can do citizenship. Skin color, which is an interesting one for me because I never realized that to some extent I have light skin privilege until I was in college. It took me a while to realize that. Formal education, ability, sexuality, neurodiversity, mental health, body size, housing, wealth, language. There's lots of others. And then to get towards strategy that you can use. So the idea is to think about ones that you have privilege with and think about strategies that you use that are on the list and maybe others. And I've asked you to bring something to write on. So I asked you to just, make some reflections about that. What aspects of privileges are particularly, I guess, up for you, or what are maybe what are your most when you think about the privilege that you have, what are the biggest ones? And then think about what you might do about them to use your privilege for good. So if you would take maybe just a couple of minutes just to make some notes, and then we can share and see what we learned and maybe copy somebody's strategies.
Are you able to put the slide up again with the wheel so
Sure.
I can see the titles again?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll make it a little bigger. It's pretty much all I can do.
All right,
Oh
so just to
no,
get
we could see it.
Okay.
oh yeah, just to get this right. So we're looking through this wheel and like seeing which one we have the most of.
Yeah, one or two that you think you have most of relative to other
Okay.
people. And the idea is what could you do to use it positively?
Okay.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, I inadvertently shut off my computer, but I'm back. I'm
All right.
fine. But say it again, Angela. What do we
So
have?
so you have certain privileges. So in this wheel, you pick out one or two that are really you think you have a lot more privilege than any most people that you come in contact with, or ones
Okay.
that are really up for you. And then if you want, you could use the strategies that I put there, and think about what you could do to to impact things differently.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what you choose, you just choose something. Everybody okay? You need more time?
I'm done.
All right, well, I'll start. I thought of two, and I thought of language, and I thought of skin color. Now, I live in a little town that the predominant so-called minority group are Latinos. And I speak a little Spanish, right? But and I do engage a little bit, but I could certainly engage more. You know, how are you doing? You know, ¿qué pasa? ¿De dónde vas? You know, where you come from. So it's kind of a small thing. The other one, which is a little bit interesting for me to choose, I chose skin color. You know, I mentioned earlier that I kind of like took it for granted in a lot of my you know, when I was younger, that, you know, I'm a person of color, and that was it. You know, I didn't think about it anymore. But the fact of the matter is that there's a sort of a difference in how people view me because I'm light skinned, or I look more white than a dark skinned person. So that's just a fact. At least to me, it's a fact. So what can I do about it? I don't know what I could do about it other than to talk to darker skinned people about it and just to sort of get their experience about that, which I don't think I've ever done.
Mm.
Or maybe once or twice or something, but you know, it'd be interesting. I could learn. So I don't know if the fact that Ian and Ken are not here means that they don't want to do this exercise or something. They're having bandwidth issues or whatever. But
Ken's back
Ken's
now.
back. Yeah,
Ian fell off.
yeah. He's got Wi-Fi issues.
Well, I don't know. What I can go. I chose wealth. Um, I'm not wealthy, but I own my own house. Well, it has a mortgage, and I'm pretty financially stable. So the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, helping others. Um, um, and I do. The thing that gets me is the animals. I take care of animals. I take care of cats. And that's how I share my wealth. And I'm thinking of volunteering more, you know, and if it's with anything, it's going to be with animals. I feel animals are in worse situations than people. I'm going to go for them first. Uh, the one thing I wanted, mental health, I'm in a pretty good situation. Well, maybe that's the thing with I'm feeling good. I don't have a lot of stress and anxiety right now, probably because I'm old. By the time you get old, it's like, you know, hey, what the hell are you going to do? It is what it is. Um, so I've been, I guess, in terms of mental health, like, but I guess it's a part of wealth too. I've been within my community. I'm a block captain and I do block parties and things like that. So that in that sense, it's helpful. But I just wanted to say something about language, which was negative for me, which I mean, my language skills are okay. I've always had word finding problems. My predicament, which isn't obvious in the language thing. Um, I know this language. Uh, I don't know any other language. I'm learning Italian, my parents, my mother didn't learn English until she went to school. My father was pretty good. My mother's language skills were horrendous, basically because she didn't go to school very often and she was bilingual. And believe it or not, even though I was born in this country, that affected me. My language skills are not that good because I didn't have um, a mother whose language skills. I think my father's skills were better, but she was the one I think who was with me most of the time. He was working. So I think that's an unusual situation where you might think, this woman's language skills, her language skills are weak. Why? There's no reason. But being raised by a first generation Italian or person in another language can be an issue. So that's my 2 cents. Oh, I
You're
can't.
Ian, if you're
muted, Ann.
talking, we don't hear you. We don't hear you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Trying to talk, Ian?
Yo, Ian, what's happening?
He's going in and out. He looks more distressed than usual. Why Ian is orienting, so anybody else have anything they want to?
Can I pick up on what Latifa said about language? It's not exactly what I was working on during the exercise, but I think oral communication skills, elocution, erudition are all insignificant considerations. And having been a lawyer, I'm retired. It certainly advantaged me that I was a very skilled writer and could be a skilled orator when I made the effort. Briefly, so my mother went to Wellesley College, which was like the top women's college in the country, more or less, and was Phi Beta Kappa and won all these academic awards and read to the extreme, high end, fairly high end of academic and literary work. So whenever she would use a word that I didn't understand, like peripatetic or on and on and on, she would tell me, and I have a very good memory. So it all stuck with me, and I began to use the words in my language. And I got to the point where I could speak ways that in English that other people didn't fully understand because I knew too many words. So my wife has said to me, cut back, speak, don't show off how great your vocabulary is. Speak to, don't show off. Speak the way people can understand. So it's actually a thing of privilege, and I've sort of assumed it in terms of like showing off. I come from this family with this mother, and I know a lot of 4 or 5 multisyllabic, polysyllabic words that you don't, and I can use them fluently in a sentence. And if you don't understand, go look it up. So, that's a kind of a small example, and maybe not exactly kind of what you were going for, Angelo, but I couldn't help picking up on it after Latifa said it, because use of words. Also, my family was acerbic and sarcastic. You could use words to hurt, so that I picked up on that. Great. So sometimes when you can be the most articulate person, you can be the most skillful at hurting other people. Do it like a laser flash. So all that's significant to me. I apologize if it's tangential to where we were really going with this exercise, but
So what did you come up with when you did your thing?
Well, I looked at wealth primarily, and I've been trying to figure out for 3 years since I retired what I can do to sort of give back and deal effectively with my privilege. So I didn't come up with any real new ideas in the 5 minutes that we had today. I've been thinking, as I say, I've been working on it for 3 years. But there are things that I'm doing, and in the interest of time, I'm already talking more than I normally, do. I would, I could talk to you offline, Angelo, but I am doing some things, and am looking at doing some more things, but it has to do with wealth and privilege, and I have all, basically all the superficial or straightforward privileges of white, male, American, heterosexual, other than being Jewish, which is not always a privilege. I have pretty much all of them. So I don't know if I answered your question, but in the interest of time, I think I would love to let other people speak.
Can I just interject real quickly, a spoiler alert? I'm using somebody else's computer from work. My name's not Latifa Peak, it's Lorraine Pelicano. So my name's Lorraine. I'm just using her computer. So, okay, just wanted to clear that up.
I knew that.
Okay, I knew you knew that.
Okay, I'll get back to the subject. Okay. So how I use my privilege, the privilege of education. So to be an ally, and that means to write, and like to give voice to the people in the world whose voice tends not to be heard because, and see, I'm an English speaker, so that's the main language of the world, in the media and everything, and so we native speakers have all these privileges that we can get the message out to a lot of people and have a lot of influence. But there's so many people in the world who don't have that privilege. So I try to be an ally by giving voice to them, and to bring it to the attention of people in the English language, what others are talking about in the rest of the world and how they feel, what it looks like, what the world looks like to them. So to me, that's really important. And then in the United States, when the Black Lives Matter protests took place and the George Floyd, murder, okay. Yeah, I felt like, hey, one thing that white people need to do is say, look, this is what we're making an effort to understand the situation. We're making an effort to know what it feels like, and so I also write about that I'm trying to be a responsible white person in this very difficult situation.
Yeah, and just a shout out. I don't know if anybody's on Medium, but Bill writes very prolifically, a lot of stuff there, and yeah, it's just why can't we get more people to read his stuff? But that's another subject. But anyway, he's doing what he's talking about, and he could talk about that for writing about like Black writers, for example, and yeah, just put Bill Kelly. You'll find him. I could even send you a link, and I'll do that when we get off the call. For Tibas, it's like you're going to be taking us out. Ian said his computer is down; he can't get back on. Send his regards. So that's that.
My turn.
Yes, your turn.
So 2 things or 1 thing you said?
Whatever. The floor is yours. 1 or 2.
I feel like I'm like you when it comes to skin color, because I actually, until the pandemic, I did not realize the racism in New Jersey. And, because of my mental health, I was living in a blur. Like I was very careless and reckless. So I didn't really focus on such things like racism. So when I was out with a friend of mine who was former friend who's doing her doctorate in trauma psychology at Widener, she was one of the 2 people who was selected to attend in the program that's Black. And anyway, I was out with her. We went to 2 places, and both places were racist to us. And that was the first time I experienced what she was feeling, right? And it was like a wake-up call for me. I guess I was just not as aware to it because of my mental health before. And then I even had my own experiences where I was being followed, by a manager in a store in the mall, and the perception they may have had of me with a book bag and sweatpants and things like that. So the reason is because also like Rowan, like going to Rowan, the skin color aspect was big for me because I feel like I didn't fit in. And the other Indian person who was a guy felt the same way, that we were the only two in the whole department. So like how you said for you, you're kind of, I don't know what exactly you said. Yeah, like you're half white, half black, right, Angelo?
I'm not really half white, half black, but you
Oh.
know, I'm light skinned.
Oh, okay.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah, so okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know that. But for me, it just kind of was like a wake-up call. Like being Indian here, of course, my family has been told, like, go back to your country. My neighbor has been a Karen, if you guys know what that means, you know, where she's gonna call the cops on us and things like that, like giving us trouble, like for no reason, because my parents don't speak fluent English. So I have to come to the door, like, what's the problem? In the past. So I've had neighbors like that where they like banged on our door, all Caucasians, saying they're gonna call the cops because we're making too much noise and things. Anyway, so that's one thing I feel like that I'm learning more about, like different life experiences as I get older. I'm only 30, and then I feel like my mental health is very robust. My mental health is really well. Like recently, the one trigger I shared with Angelo, someone had told me to go kill myself, and that kind of put me in a dark place for a few hours. But then I got myself out of it and got outside, got moving. Like on social media, I had tagged someone in a post and then they told me to go kill myself. That's not the response I thought I would receive, but it triggered something for me, my past losses. And I used to be suicidal for many years. So for me, that just took me back. Like someone telling me that was very mean to me. Other than that experience, I have the coping skills and the mental attitude to always bounce back. So those are my two things.
Well, you know, we're all relatively progressive. I think I could say that on this call. And the issue that I see, or one of the big issues, is that we're so divided as people. You know, I don't know if this is true in the 50s or 20s or whatever, but you know, so if nothing else, you have some incentive to move out of your silo a little bit and to help other people that are not in the same privilege as you. Then I'll feel that this hour and a half will be worth it for you. But anyway, thanks for coming. I don't really know, you know, I don't have any kind of like rosy aphorism to send us out on, other than you know, thanks for coming, and I hope this is useful.
Thank you. I hope you feel better, Ken.
Thank you, Angelo, and everyone. It was really good. It was really useful.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Angelo.
I think it was great. It was great.
Yeah. This
Thanks
is a
a
good
lot.
one, Angelo. Good topic.
I want to read it. I want to read an oracle card. I got a new deck, like my first deck. So whoever resonates with, it's not where I do readings or anything, but I've been doing like putting intention, and the card I pick seems to be aligning with like what I need. So I don't know. I'm just gonna pick something. Okay. Wow. Okay. So
good.
It says, not for me, just in general, it says, what am I most afraid of losing? Soul truth. And then the back says, as we grow, change, and transform our lives, it requires us to let go of something that was, to make room for what will be. If you were to take the big leap today, would you feel scared of losing love, safety, or belonging? What if it was a big fat lie? What if it was impossible to lose any of those things because you have the power to give everything you need to yourself? Today's soul action. So this is your homework. Name that fear and look at the worst case scenario. Find a solution. Take your power back by being certain of who you are and where you are going. Today's mantra, which is mantra, pronounced mantra. I move forward knowing I am powerful beyond measure. I am loved, I am safe, and I belong. Woo! I think it's perfect for our call, guys.
Yeah.
God is so good.
Right.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks,
Really
everybody.
good.